Welcome everybody. It is December 15th, 5:33, and this is the Sustainability Commission regular meeting. I will turn it over to Roy Clark, the chair.
Welcome. I'd like to call to order the December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission. Dan, would you please take the roll call for the last time?
Sure. Chair Clark.
Present.
Vice Chair McCann.
Present.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Flanagan.
Here.
Commissioner Friedman.
Here.
Commissioner Garrett.
Here.
Commissioner Futterman and Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Gauthier are not here. Have you heard from other than Greg? Have you heard from the other two ladies?
Lonnie said that she was trying to log in, so I sent her the link, so she should be joining us. And I did not, oh, there she is. And I did not hear from Jennifer.
Okay.
So Lonnie's entering the room.
Lonnie is here. Okay. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Dan. I'd like to welcome the commissioners, staff members, and visitors. There will be time for public comments later in the meeting. Please keep your microphones muted during the meeting, and please raise your hand to be called to speak at the appropriate time, and then unmute your microphones. And please do not use the chat feature in Zoom. The first major item on the agenda is the acceptance of the agenda. It was emailed and posted last Thursday, December 10th, per city policy. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
This is Carl, so moved.
Thank you, Carl. A second?
I'll second it, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all in favor of accepting the agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion is passed. The next item on the agenda is the staff comments by Manager Tallarico. Many of them are covered in the memo that he included in the agenda packet. Patrick?
Thank you, Roy. So I would like to start with actually the second item on our list there, Dan's retirement. So as people mentioned, this is Dan's last meeting, and so we wanted to take a minute to acknowledge him. And so the first thing I will mention is, Dan, you can open your bag now. So in that bag, in that bag, you have a couple of things. One, most importantly, you have cupcakes at the very bottom of the bag. So we can raise a toast momentarily. The other thing you have in that bag, yes, there you go.
Thank you.
And so the other thing you have in that bag is a certificate inside that folder. And
thank you very much.
That certificate says, City of Palm Springs, California, and the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission recognize Daniel DeGarmo for his outstanding service to the City of Palm Springs during his tenure with the Office of Sustainability. His hard work and dedication over the past 5 years has helped the sustainability program navigate challenging times and has contributed to the overall sustainability of our community. Signed by Roy and I. So we did want to just acknowledge Dan for all of his hard work in keeping the Sustainability Commission going over the years and supporting the group over the past several years. And certainly I appreciate his help in helping me transition into this role. So appreciate him. And I invite others to raise a cupcake, Dan's honor, in appreciation of all of his service and support for this group. So thank you very much, Dan. Other people are welcome
Thank
to
you all.
applaud.
Jim.
Woohoo!
It's been a pleasure working with all of you these past 5 years. This past year has been kind of weird, but I still think we got a lot accomplished. You guys were correct in getting a manager in Patrick to come to work with us. So I think he will take the Office of Sustainability far and work well with you guys. And I will miss you all, but I appreciate the time we've been together.
Dan, are you sailing around the world or do you have any big plans?
Well, unfortunately, travel is out right now, but
Oh, yeah.
otherwise I probably would be. No.
I mean the Salton Sea, sailing around the Salton Sea.
Yeah, yes, that's about it. Yeah. Some
There you go.
day trips for now, but other than that, nothing really. So, yeah, until after the vaccine, I guess.
Well, Dan,
Good,
I know that that you're dedicated enough to us that you'll be applying right away to become a commissioner on our commission.
That's
Oh,
right.
Yes,
Good
of
idea.
course,
I thought
of
we were
course.
thinking that too. Now you have all that time.
I may wait a little while. I as I told my husband, I'm going to be lazy for a few weeks.
That's good.
Is that all?
It's pretty much all there is to do right now, right?
That's pretty much it. Yes.
Dan, who's taking your place?
Huh?
Taking your place.
Their job has been posted. Applicants are
Oh, okay.
waiting to be identified, I guess.
Yep. In fact, I just literally received word from the personnel office of candidates to interview. So I'm going to be reviewing that shortly.
So who's doing the picking then? I know you're going to be interviewing Patrick, but does it go down to the city council?
No, it does not go to city council. I will have a little panel. Roy has agreed to help out, and then a couple other folks on staff. So we'll do a couple of panel interviews, I think, and then we'll just make a selection. So, yep, and then they have to go through a review and all that kind of good stuff, but it doesn't have to go up to council, so that's nice. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Would you guarantee making some more of these delicious chocolate?
Absolutely.
Very
When
good.
that person comes on board, I do think
So
we should.
good.
Very moist.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure out another way to another celebration thing to celebrate. So maybe when we hire the new person.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank
We'll
you.
miss you.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you,
Thank you.
Patrick.
I just heard from Jen. She's had some family stuff going on, so she may not join us.
Okay. All right. So only other couple of things I wanted to mention. We did have the council meeting last week, and they did approve the streamlined EV charger permitting agenda item, which we've been trying for so long to get on there. And then the only question that they asked was, where are the EV chargers? So we're getting to that. So I told them January. And then we did the little sustainability scholarship presentation, and we'll get the word out about that here. And so I think we're all good to go on that front. We're just creating the letters and the notices and all that for that program. So the only other thing I wanted to mention to you and share with you is if you haven't seen it already, the city did update their website. And so I wanted to show that to you. So it has a little bit of a different look, some different things across the top. The buttons that are here now are apparently the most clicked items on the website. So those are the things that pop up, will pop up regularly here. You get to our sustainability page by going to government, sustainability and recycling. And as you'll see, it looks pretty different. What we did was we took advantage of a new function on the website, which is an accordion function. And so we have our typical scrolling banner at the top, but then we've got, what I did was I tried to include a lot of the main links that people go to. And the, let's see, and the rebates and new programs that we've got right now. So I tried to make sure that those were prominent on the homepage, and then other things that were on here before are collapsed. So if people want to look at COVID-19 related information, they can do that, click on that. Recent program updates. So here's where we'll have a little news information, that kind of stuff. And then Neighborhood Environmental Challenge, which it's mostly on here because it's a little hard to get to otherwise. And then I added a thing on here about reporting violations and sharing concerns. So people have that information readily available too. So anyway, so that's our redesign. I would very much like for you guys to take a look through the website. There are a couple of formatting issues still, but we're working on those. But especially if you click on links and they're broken, let us know. When they did the transfer, it wasn't super clean. So some of the links may have become broken and that kind of thing. And we've gone through it a couple of times. But again, if you take a look at it, just stroll through it and see if you see anything that's fishy or doesn't work, just send me a note and I can take care of that. So yes, Lonnie. Oh, you're muted.
Simple, easy thing. I noticed that that our starting time of our meeting says 6 o'clock. So that's it. Okay.
Oh, was it on there? Was it still 6 o'clock on there? Okay. All right. We'll take care of that.
Yeah, but overall, I thought it was way more user-friendly
Mhm.
than the last one.
Yeah.
Having gone to the last one a lot.
Yeah, that accordion function really helps out, I think, in terms of organizing information and really letting people get to what they want to get to a little easier. So,
Great.
all right. And I think, was there one other thing? Let me see if there's another thing I wanted to ask you about. I think that's it for that, those items. Any questions that you have on any of those things, council meeting topics or the website? We'll get to the other stuff in old business, I think.
Patrick, I'll start working now that the 1236 ordinance has been passed. I'll start working on a draft of the update of the materials on the website because they do need a bit of clarification. So I'll work on that with the objective of hopefully when council meets again in January and approved in second reading, we can start working on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Maybe if possible, I can have a version available for the Green Building Solar Committee meeting on, I think, the 5th.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, and back to you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comments. This time is for members of the public to address the Sustainability Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject jurisdiction of the commission. The commission values your comments, but pursuant to the Brown Act, cannot take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned for each speaker. Is there anyone present who would like to make public comment? I know we have some visitors here this evening.
Roy, I'm not sure if you're taking people in a particular order. I would like to make a comment though.
Please go ahead, Grant.
Yeah. As usual, there's a robust agenda with a lot of interesting items. I am going to have to bow out of the meeting after listening to a few for work-related training exercise, but I knew this was going to be Dan's last meeting, and I just wanted to express my gratitude as a former sustainability commissioner for all the work that Dan has done for the commission. Always dependable, always reliable, always a voice of reason and calm, always very helpful for the events that we participated in together. So, Dan, I just wanted to thank you and best of luck.
Thank you very
And
much.
I'm sure we'll
Grant.
stay in touch.
I'm sure we will. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm gonna go for it clipped. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Grant.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, we have no presentations, so we'll next move to acceptance of the meeting minutes from the November 17th meeting. They were emailed and posted last Thursday, December 10th, per city policy. Is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
Motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Rob. Is there a second?
Second, Carl.
Sandra? Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from November? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. And any abstentions? Okay, the meeting minutes have been accepted. And we'll move on to old business. I think all of these items are for Patrick, so I'll turn it back over to you, Patrick.
All right, thank you. So a couple of things just wanted to follow up on. In terms of leaf blower enforcement, I did do a little presentation at the 1PS meeting earlier this month. And there wasn't a lot of feedback that we got from that. A couple of people said, yes, raise the fines. A couple of people were concerned about the low compliance rate and felt like more education is needed. And so basically what we're doing, and then Roy and Mike Villegas talked at the 1PS Code Enforcement and Public Works Subcommittee the next day about it a little bit. So we are starting an effort to reach out to gardeners again. There is some new money available to them through that sustainability scholarship program. So we have that carrot going forward that we can use to help them comply. And the state funding is still available for them to switch over to electric leaf blowers if they exchange their gas one. So anyway, so hopefully that additional outreach will work and cause more people to comply. But I do not think that we have a communication issue. I think that we have a compliance issue. And so we're going to focus on getting the word out about those new incentives and see what happens. And then we'll follow it up with some additional detail on perhaps additional enforcement efforts if that does not pan out. One of the things I am asking you guys is anybody that's interested, what I would like to do is a visual audit. And basically that just involves trolling around a neighborhood over a certain week and just logging the number of gas blowers you see and the number of electric blowers you see. I've been doing this informally the past couple of weeks, mostly in our neighborhood and just when I drive around. And again, that's where I sort of got the 50% compliance rate number, is that generally speaking, I was finding about 50 or so percent of people using gas versus 50% using electric. And so I wanted to do something a little bit more formal. There's really no way to know what the compliance rate is because people switch out at a moment's notice and they'll go back and forth depending on whether or not their electric is out of juice. So it really is a hard thing to assess. But what I thought is that at least if we made an effort to kind of canvass some neighborhoods and try to gather some data, that would at least be some data point we could point to give us a general sense of how things are going. So I would like to get anybody that's interested in doing that. Again, it would be kind of at your leisure. You could drive around, you could bike around, you could walk around your neighborhood. And based on how many people would be interested in doing this, we'll kind of divide up the city, if that's okay. So anybody interested in helping to do that? Lonnie, Sandra?
I have one question also when you're done.
Okay, sure.
I mean, with this.
And Roy? Okay. All right, any other takers?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay. Okay. So we'll, I'll get back to you guys with a little assignment, and again, just kind of over the course of a week, do a little patrolling and kind of make some notations. Lonnie, you had a question.
It's pretty minor. Do you mostly notice a difference by sound or by smell or both?
It's mostly by sound
Yeah,
that
okay.
I notice it. And one of the things that I've noticed recently is there is a lot of trimming going on. And so some people are confusing the trimmers with the gas leaf blowers. But generally the trimmers, there is a sawing sound that's associated with it that's not associated with a leaf blower. So it can be a little bit confusing just going on sound. So that's why we try to do a visual if we can do that. So, and generally speaking, the gas blowers, the gas backpack blowers are the round ones, and the electric ones are the rectangular ones. So it's a good way to see them. Yeah, Sandra.
The electric ones tend to look a little smaller, and it seems that most of the gas ones are sort of opaque, but you can, so I guess you can see where the fuel level is in them. And that is, if you're coming up behind them or something, it is kind of the easiest
Right.
way. The sound is definitely very different.
Right, right. The biggest thing that I've noticed is that, like, I would say 30 or 40% of the time, they don't even need to be doing it. Like, it's really is amazing. There is a use issue with them as well. I mean, people just blow stuff. Like I don't even know where it's going or what it's doing, but they're just blowing. So anyway, so I think there's a lot of improvement that can be made on the user end too. So, all right, great. So we'll follow up on that, and we'll continue our efforts to reach out to them and take some action there. And let's see, otherwise, I did have a good conversation with Chris from PSDS, and we're going to be meeting probably weekly now to start our SB 1383 review, and to try to get our franchise agreement up to date with 1383 and to start to move in that direction. So that is all in the works. And then the other thing that is mentioned in the report is that, and we had some more conversation about it today actually with CVAG, is that we are going to be looking at more of a regional approach to communication about 1383, because everybody in the Valley has to comply with it, and pretty much the requirements are all the same. So we really want to get the word out broadly about who needs to comply and how. And then the other couple of things, I did talk to our GHG consultant yesterday, and it does look like that we are not going to get any information from them until late January, February timeframe because of the delay in getting the vehicle miles traveled information. So, so anyway, so that we're going to push that off until probably January, February timeframe. And then the last thing is our demo garden and turf conversion at the airport, which I wanted to talk to you about a little bit more. So a couple of months ago, I think we had the presentation on the concept, and based on that concept, we convened our little work group to provide some more input on plant types to our consultant. And so based on the input that we provided, the consultant came up with a plant list and a planting plan. And so what you see here on the screen is the planting plan that is based on the plant list that we came up with. So they took it and they took into consideration a couple of things. One is plant height. And so the taller plants are along the sides of the beds. So, so as you're looking from the airport over here out to the fountain, it'll sort of have a curved effect to it. So the lower plants will be in the middle and then they'll get bigger as you go out. So that's one thing that we wanted to kind of preserve is that view to the fountain. So that this does that. The other thing is that you'll notice on here is that the diagram is basically to scale, and it features, I think, the size of plants at maturity. So of course, when we plant them, they'll be a lot smaller, but this is the kind of the mature sizing of the plants that's depicted here. And then the last thing I'll point out is in the middle, we had originally envisioned a straight path of some sort of turf alternative. In our discussions about turf alternatives, that didn't really pan out. None of the things that we were looking at really were very effective in terms of planting them in full sun in our environment. So we didn't have a very good alternative for that. So what they did was we actually kind of envisioned almost like a stream bed that runs through the middle of the garden. And it would be made up of very low growing kind of succulent plants. And then we would have a little bit of rock at the edges, and then it will go into the rest of the garden. So two things are different from the concept. One is that the path is now windy instead of straight. The other thing is that it's not really going to be kind of a turf alternative. It's going to be kind of just a low-lying turf-like or just low-lying green spread in the middle. So those are the couple of things I wanted to point out to you, and I would love to get any questions you have or comments you have just based on what you see. And we'll take this back to our little group too after this meeting, I wanted to run it by you to see if you had any questions or concerns. Jim.
It looks lovely, and I maybe that's a little outside of what you're asking, but I'm still wondering who's actually going to use this that much, and is there any further discussion about moving car share over that area, or is that kind of outside of this for now?
Totally outside of this, but no, there has been no talk of car share.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And I do think actually there could be a fair amount of use for two things. One is visitors that come. If we make it attractive enough, it could become like a little place to get your picture taken and after you land. Second thing is there is people do wait for cars and things over here on this side towards the airport side. So I imagine that some of them will kind of stroll through this area a little bit. And then I would envision, I think DWA wants to promote this a lot. And so I would envision groups coming over, parking at the city hall and just walking over, because I've been doing that quite a bit in just kind of getting the lay of the land. And it actually is a really easy thing to do, to just park at city hall and walk across the street. So
is there, one more question too, is there any
Yep.
signage that says Palm Springs Airport there? Because I'm always astonished at the number of people I see at the tramway pulling over to take their picture in front of the Palm Springs marquee.
Right. We could talk to them about that. We had talked initially in our little group about there being some sort of public art or something in here that would be an attractor. And the previous airport administrator wasn't too excited about that. But we may have an opportunity to do something more like that here. Like right now, this rightmost little plot is where we had planned for signage. We could kind of turn that around a little bit and use that as kind of a focal point for something like a Palm Springs sign or something like that. And then put the signage at the right end of, at the end of the bigger plot that's over there. So that's something we could consider and think
Okay.
about.
Yeah, I don't want to undermine the beauty of it, but the Instagram ready kids are,
Right,
you build it and they will come.
right, exactly.
Absolutely correct. If we did something like that, P.S. I love you in front of the Kimpton Hotel, that would attract, once people started putting that on Instagram, you wouldn't even have to advertise.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Patrick, I have a quick question. So what was the path in the middle, which was something that you could walk on? I looked at the plants on the plant list, so I got the impression that you'd be on the sides here, so you would no longer be walking through the middle. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
that was the other thing about it, is that we weren't really finding things that were very tread worthy.
Yeah.
So we didn't want it to be very inviting for walking on. So I
Okay.
think that this new kind of approach probably does that.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. And also, I just I updated the DWA board this morning, let them know that we were moving forward with that. So they were quite
Great.
appreciative.
Also, the majority of people be pulling luggage through that, so you really do need a concrete pathway rather than granite, pulverized granite.
Yep. Yeah, and those will be concrete, the paths. So that will further direct people to those areas too. Okay. All right. Any other questions, Lonnie?
Yeah. I think that the design that they finally have come up with is great. I love that waving line rather than the regimented design that they had before. So I think it's great that, like you and I were talking about, it's a lot of different kinds of plants. And I guess we can afford it. But I'd say if we can, we should go for it. They're not all going to survive, and we'll find out which ones do within the next, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and how they're going to do in the full sun. And then we'll just fill it in. We'll know what to put in there.
Right.
Well, keep our fingers crossed, we'll know what to put in there.
Right.
But I think it's great. I really think it's fabulous.
Yeah, and it actually making that path in the middle a little wavy actually gives us a little bit more area to plant in too. So, so I think it'll be helpful from that perspective too. And I do think, to your point, I do think the one on the right looks a little bit more open to me, and the one on the left looks a little more crowded to me. And so I might just ask them to go and kind of take a look at that and just maybe edit out a couple of the plants on the left. Just to thin it out a bit. Yeah, Lonnie.
Yeah, one other question. I would love to see this. I would love to hold this in my hand and see this blown up and not just on my computer screen. I suppose I could print it if I could figure it out, but I'd love to, be able to place the plants and go through. Just having received it, I don't feel like I've had too much of a chance with it yet.
Yeah. We'll go through it in more depth whenever our little group meets too. So I mostly wanted to get some feedback from the full group just to see if anybody had any concerns about any of the things they saw. So we can work out some of the details. Yeah, Carl.
Will they have names of the plants, like botanical garden type things? So
yeah. So our plan. So our plan is to have signage. So we're going to have signage towards the entrance. So again, depending on where that falls, so it'll be towards the right. And then we also had plans to add some signage probably near some of the bench space or where some of the curves are. So just kind of strategically throughout so that they can, we're also thinking about using the QR codes so that people could just flash over them and then they get all the information on a particular plant.
Great idea.
Yeah, so. All right, any other questions? All right.
Is this all within our budget?
Oh, what's that?
Is this all within our budget?
Yeah, they've been doing a pretty good job of kind of plugging things in and seeing where we're falling. And but yeah, I think we're all pretty much on budget with this design.
Wow.
Sandra.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I like the change in the design and that the curve really, it's so much more dynamic on your eye and to be in that space, I think it's lovely. The issue of the signing, I think, that's important and, the Instagram moment, I think shouldn't be passed. And if there's, maybe some art everywhere, or one sculptural addition, even if it was maybe functioning as a bird bath or something, natural, helping, the critters in the area would be nice. But I think of some public art would be, even if it was small or a few things placed in the garden, would be a nice addition.
Yep. Yep.
But I think it's lovely, so, yeah.
Yeah, we've been holding off a little bit of talking to the public arts folks, but I do think that there's some opportunities here.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Maybe through the schools or something, it might be something we could speak to Jennifer about.
Yeah, but possibly. Would love some, it'd be kind of fun to get some ideas for it. So, all right, well, great. So more to follow on this. If I assume that if, well, let me back up. So the plan would be to have maybe a more detailed conversation with our little subgroup that includes members of the Airport Commission's Landscape Committee as well. So we want to bring that back to that little group, kind of refine things a bit. Assuming that there's no major changes, what we'll do is we'll probably take this to the Airport Commission in January and get their thumbs up on it. And then I have to see if we have to bring it back to City Council for the final design. But the next step would be to essentially get bids on this to have it constructed. So that's really the next step. So, all right, so more to follow. I'll keep you guys posted on that activity. All right, I would also encourage you guys to look through the plant list because it's actually a really nice summary of plants that seemingly do really well out here. And the group took a lot of time in trying to figure out what works and got rid of what doesn't. So there are some unique things on there that you don't necessarily see so often. So I would encourage you to take a look at that if you're planting anything. And then that's all I had on the demo garden. And I think that's all of old business.
Thank you, Patrick. And we move to new business. And the first item there is yours, EV Charger Expansion Award.
Yes. All right. So I wanted to just share with you a little presentation that will form the basis for a staff report to City Council whenever this all comes together. So basically, I wanted to give you an update of where we are. Just a little history. Pre-COVID, the city decided to expand its EV network, as you know, and move to a fee-based system. Currently, all of our chargers are free around the city, and they were put in around the 2013 timeframe. So they're sort of reaching the end of their technically useful life, although most of them still work. We did receive some grant funding in 2019 and 2020 to help install some of these things. $60,000 for 18 level 2 chargers isn't actually a lot if you're running any power lines. And then we've got $140,000 right now for level 3 chargers, the fast chargers, through another grant. And that one is actually going to expire in March. So hopefully we can get something in the ground before then so we don't lose that money. We started to work on the Solar and Green Building Subcommittee on the scope and talked about that a little bit and shared initial ideas with the commission in January of 2020. And we actually were starting to pursue purchase of the chargers in March timeframe right before COVID hit. So then of course COVID hit and we were asked to look for a low or no cost solution given the city's budget and move to a model where the chargers would be owned by others. So somebody else would come in and actually own and operate them. So based on that direction, we issued an RFP in July for this low or no cost solution. We also were clear in that RFP that we were open to phasing in various locations and also discussing maybe not to do certain locations. So we were really open to scope for the responses that we got. We got 11 responses in August, and two of them were not responsive to the RFP, so they were eliminated. 8 of them had very significant upfront installation and equipment costs to the city in the range of the lowest one was about $300,000 to $400,000 as just a ballpark, which we knew was not going to be accurate, to $1 to $2 million. So very significant costs to the city in most of the responses that we received. And then we did get one that actually responded to the low or no cost business model that we had requested. So the other thing that it did provide was a pretty competitive rate for users. So that was one of the things we were looking for as well. So the city proceeded with, is in the process of negotiating with that preferred provider. And we're basically focused on scoping. So a little bit more about the model that they were proposing. Basically, they reimburse or finance directly the city costs for installation and equipment. So they basically end up paying for all of the equipment and installation. They do pay the city a leasing fee for the spaces that they use. So for example, they would pay us, say, $75 for a level 3 and $25 for a level 2 space. So we get revenue as a result of their presence. And I did do a rough calculation based on the scope that I'm gonna share with you, that we make about $15,000 a year, I think, just for letting them be. So then they do, I think their rate for users is going to be about 29 cents a kilowatt hour, which if you look across the valley, that's probably one of the lowest that's out there. I think the ones down in Rancho or Indio are about 34 cents. So they're pretty low, but will be a little bit lower. And then they would assume all operations, maintenance, and networking of the station. So we really don't have to worry about it. We would get data from them if we need it and have access to that, but that's really about it. When people have a problem with the stations, they would call them directly and they would service them. The other thing is that their proposal takes advantage of the grants that we have, but doesn't necessarily rely on them. So some of the proposals that we got were, well, if the city got $500,000 in grants, then there would be no cost to the city. But that, we know how that goes. So we didn't want to rely on the grants because they've got a lot of conditions and things like that. So anyway, so that was also appealing to us in terms of their proposed approach. So in our discussion so far on scope, I did want to kind of go through it with you because it's a little bit different than what we talked about before. So instead of doing the entire city at one time, which would be hard to do anyway, what we've talked about with them is a phased approach because it also gives us a chance to work with them a little bit and see how that goes and make sure that the relationship is right moving forward. So the first phase, phase 1A and B, focused on downtown. So really, and City Hall. So those are really the core of what we would focus on in the first phase. So City Hall, we've been installing 2 DC fast chargers and 2 dual port level 2 stations. And so those stations would all be consolidated right across from where our entrance is here in the back. So that would add for us a total of 6 stations, I think. So a total of 4 new stations. So 2 fast chargers and 2 level 2s. So that's a great asset for here at City Hall. We do have a lot of usage of our EV chargers by both the public and the city. So I think this is a great location for us. The other location is the new downtown museum garage. since we'll have the new park that's going in there, I think that this garage will be used quite frequently. And so this is going to be kind of our charging hub. Tesla has several in the basement of that garage, and then we would be at the entrance level. And we would have 4 fast chargers and then 7 level 2 charging spaces. So, so quite a bit of charging capacity there, and we could certainly expand if we needed to. Then downtown Barristo Garage, this is one where they would like to put 4 fast chargers in and then 2 dual port level 2 stations. So we would basically be taking over the parking on, if you've ever been into that garage, that's right behind the Village Pub there. If you go into the entrance and to the right, the handicap spaces are right there to the right. And then we would take the entire east facing side of that parking garage with all EV chargers. So that's where that would go. There's a little, the parking lot behind the vineyard area, there are 2, there's 2 level 2 chargers there. And so we would just double the amount to 4. And then the convention center lot is, we would just be replacing the 2 dual ports that are there now with 2 new ones, so that basically the entire downtown corridor would be converted after this first phase, which I think is kind of important to have a little consistency across the city of people's experience. So, so that's the first phase. And then phase 2, again, depending on how this goes, would really focus on the community centers and other locations around the city of converting over what we have. I think that Ruth Hardy Park could be a main hub where we might add a fast charger or 2, as well as level 2s. And then Demuth Park is another one that we've been targeting. So anyway, so that would be phase 2, and we would do that through a change in the contract, again, assuming everything went smoothly in that first phase. And then this is just gives you a sense of schedule. So we would finalize the scope and agreement this month, present it to council in January, finalize the contract, and secure the permits for everything in February, March timeframe, and then begin construction in March, April. So spring timeframe. Hopefully with everything completed by the early summer. So that's the hope. So that is where we're at with that. And so I wanted to get your feedback on that. And I think I would like some sort of consensus or some thumbs up from the group to move forward, unless you've got any questions or concerns about what I presented. So,
Patrick, this is David. Can you explain a little bit more about the point in the presentation, take advantage of grants but doesn't rely on them? Mm-hmm. Would the city have to, I mean, there's like $200,000. Would we have to give the grant money back, or could we use it and then essentially, and that would pay for the installation, but then the preferred provider would then reimburse us for that? Is that how that would work? It just wasn't clear from your slide exactly what's happening.
So what I meant by that was basically that we've got some grants in hand, and those are nice things to have, and we will utilize them to the extent that we can utilize them. And the preferred provider that we're working with is sort of on board with that. So the grant money is nice, and it's helpful to offset their costs. But they aren't going to halt their project if for some reason the grant money expires. Like for instance, the $140,000 for the level 3 chargers expires in March. And if something were to happen, if they refuse to extend that, again, the provider is not going to stop the project just because of that. So that's kind of what I meant by, their they didn't rely on them to place their bid. There were other people that responded that basically said, oh, you've got this much money, we'll put that money to work, and then you can apply for additional funds and offset your costs in the future. And so we weren't excited about that.
But would the pricing change, for example, if not able to put the level 3 chargers in the ground and the grant isn't extended, would the pricing change or the amount of the city change? So,
No.
okay.
No.
All
And
right.
so, yeah, and so we're working with them a little bit, like, for example, on phase 1B, which is the church lot behind Just Fabulous, which we think would be another great spot
Yeah.
for a bunch of chargers. That one we're sort of holding off on, partly because they're going to have their hands full with the first part of that phase, but we're also kind of holding off because Southern California Edison is restarting their Charge Ready program, which is a program where they will actually fund and pay for the electrical installation costs. So if we need to upgrade a transformer or things like that, they will cover that cost. So we're hoping that that kicks in by the time that we're done with this first initial part of our work, and then that base will kick in, and so that will offset some of their costs as well. So.
Okay, all right, just obviously there's a lot of the, you know, it'd be nice, the state is one of the area where the state has been very generous under EVIP. So it'd be good to sort of use that money, take the money and run if you.
Yeah, I did already ask them for an extension and they wouldn't do it. They said that unless, they just said, talk to us when you get further along. So hopefully as we get, if we can get a contract in place and get moving on permits and all that kind of stuff to show that we're shovel ready, then I think that we shouldn't have any problem doing that. And I also have a few other applications in for Cal EVIP funding in case more money is freed up on that.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Yep.
And so thank you for that. And we can talk a little bit more about it at the next committee meeting. And
Yep.
then just comment for when you're putting random locations, I didn't see any in the south part of Palm Springs. And so Smoke Tree could be a good, you know, obviously it's right across from Saguaro down the block from, you know, the Ace and all the other hotels. So, you know, do consider something in that whole commercial corridor along East Palm Canyon, because I didn't see that as a location.
Yeah, so what is frustrating about that area of town is that there is no public space in that part of town. So
Okay.
all of these chargers are on public property. The only two exceptions that we have are the Cultural Center, Camelot Theater ones, and then the Desert AIDS Project.
Okay.
And I don't know if we had some special deal with DAP for that space,
Okay.
but in general, all of our other stuff is on private, public property, and there's just none down there. And I thought that would be a great place too. And we could actually, after this gets rolling, what we might do is kind of work with our provider and see if maybe they could cut a deal with maybe one of the folks that are down on that end.
Yeah,
So
I think that would be good. And if
Yeah.
tourism, you know, ever returns, that's obviously, particularly I know for Coachella is that there's just a whole lot of folks who stay in
Yeah.
hotels during Coachella, assuming that there will be Coachella perhaps in October 2021. So,
Right.
so that would be good. I think there's a crowd and there's a business place, but I understand those are all public, the rest are on public property, and there isn't any like city park in that area, unfortunately.
Right.
Patrick?
Yep, Carl. And then Lonnie, I think you had your hand up too. So Carl.
DAP spaces, we just allowed the city to install those.
Okay. All
There's
right.
no payment agreement or anything.
Okay. All right. So we'll probably want to revisit that just to make sure that everybody would be on board with either new ones there or an expansion there. So you may want to just keep them because they're free. So.
We do want to expand because we're building the additional.
Oh, that's right.
We are considering adding 2 more spaces.
Okay, great. So we should talk about that. All right, cool. Lonnie.
My question was about what, I may have misunderstood you. It sounded like there were some obsolete EVs that will they be taken out? They be replaced then? Is that the idea?
Right. So
So
for
they
example,
would be removed then.
yes. So what happens, they call it a rip and replace. So they just chop the top off and they use the wiring that's there and they put a new thing in its place. And so I do believe, I will have to ask them, but this may be one of those things where we could potentially sell them to the public for a very small amount. And it doesn't take a lot to install a level 2 charger. So if people wanted them, we could maybe make them available to people at a low cost. So
Well, definitely we should think in terms of recycling them in some way. I'm surprised that they're still young, it seems to me, and that they would just be ripping them out. And
right.
you know, it seems like you want something like that to last more than 5 years, don't you? I mean,
You do, but the technology changes a lot, and those ones that we have are not networked either, and so we have no information on them, which is a problem moving forward, especially when you're trying to get.
the old ones we don't have information on them.
Nope, they're not metered separately. They're not. We have no data on usage. Yeah, so it's unfortunate.
Lonnie, Carl, those are all first generation chargers.
Yeah.
So just think of your phone, the first generation it comes out, the increases have been 10 years.
It's like a flip phone. So, the flip phone of chargers is what we have. So, and again, most of them do work. They do experience some problems every once in a while, and most of the problems are related to cord management. And so that's a big thing that will come with these new ones, is they'll have a cord management system, so the cord gets sucked up, and so you don't necessarily drive away with it, and it doesn't sit on the ground, and so it's a lot better from that perspective too.
And how long are they supposed to last? Do they have a lifetime that's?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if they have a particular lifespan, but the nice thing about this arrangement is we don't have to worry about that, is that they will upgrade them if they need to be upgraded. And I'm sure that they'll always want the latest technology out there. So we can kind of work with them if they do get upgraded to see if there's a way to utilize what they get rid of or something like that. So.
I would definitely strongly encourage them to find some way to recycle them in some way, so we don't have a bunch of discs.
Right.
Trying to figure out where they're going to go,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure that we can do something
Filters.
creative. Yep. Carl.
Have they done away with the Tesla version versus other versions? Are they universal, or is it still Betamax versus VHS?
There are still different systems for Tesla versus other cars. So for example, all of those Tesla charging stations in the basement of that parking garage are only Tesla charging stations.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So no one else can charge on those.
No. So that's what makes it a little bit problematic. So we do need an extra station, even though it seems crazy because there's like going to be 24 of them, I think. You still need other chargers. So
Tesla can charge, because we see Teslas charge at DAP, and those are just generic.
Yes. Ones. So there's a little adapter that you have on that you can utilize for regular charging stations.
So there's no reverse adapter? You charge a regular car on a Tesla?
I don't think there is a reverse adapter.
Well, Tesla has proprietary, you have to own a Tesla to use it. So
it's a very fancy club.
That guy, I tell you.
I know. That Elon.
Elon.
All right. Any other questions about the charging plan? It has been a very long road, I will say that. So much more complicated than you would ever imagine. So
it's worth it.
Yes. So, all right.
Do you want the thumbs up?
Yeah. So
all we need to do is have a consensus.
Yeah. All right. So by your consensus, I will move forward. So, all right, super. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. And
what nice visuals too.
Okay. All right. So I'll continue to finalize our conversation with that. The only other thing that we have that's left in that process is our lawyers are still looking at the leasing agreement. So the lawyers will have to just make sure that that's all put together, and they're working on it. So I think that'll come through here in the next week or so. All right. I think that is the end of my new business.
Thank you, Patrick. The next item under new business is a follow on from a discussion that we had, a presentation that we had at our November meeting. by Jim Flanagan, and that's fees at the Barstow parking structure. Jim, would you like to give a verbal report?
Yeah. I will try to keep this under 10 minutes. It's 6:30. So when we left off, I gave you some research with some recommendations for downtown parking fee structure and including this in the general plan. So I did some research. I did find a number of spots in the general plan visions and priorities that looks like that this fits in well with the general plan. Numbers 2, 7, and 9 all encourage reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, encouraging safe bicycle and pedestrian movements, and creating areas that are less dependent on the automobile. So I think it fits in pretty well. But more importantly, I talked with a couple of folks. One of them was Max Scheidemann, who's a former city traffic engineer at the city of Palm Springs. And more importantly, I talked with council member Dennis Woods. And I learned some more things, which I'll share with you quickly. Both Max and Dennis were supportive of a fee-based street parking. So I had been mentioning parking at the Barstow structure, and both of them said, no. What's really important here is merchants, and merchants need turnover in front of their stores. They want, cars to come in for half an hour, 15 minutes, buy a cup of coffee and leave. They don't want people parking there a lot, and turnover is really important. And Dennis Councilmember Woods seems pretty sophisticated as far as he suggested demand pricing, where you actually price the meters at such an amount so that you always have 5 to 10% of the spaces available. And that kind of rang for me because I generally don't even park on Palm Canyon because I know it's hard to find spaces there. So both of those were valuable to merchants, they thought, to encourage turnover. I talked to Carl a little bit and we both agreed, well, they do have some downtown limits already. I mean, you look around, there's green spots, which are 20 minutes on most of Palm Canyon. It's the 3-hour maximum on Palm Canyon from noon to 8. And then in the plaza, there's a 2-hour maximum, but most of those spots are full. So it means the turnover benefits are less. But one thing I did take away is that Carl pointed out that he gets marked and ticketed. So we already are doing parking enforcement. So I guess what that means is that since we're already doing parking enforcement, that means putting in meters will cost less than I would think because we already have an enforcement budget there. So another thing that we discussed was that where the parking demand exceeds supply, like in the downtown areas, less turnover means more drivers must circle to look around, and fee-based parking will make sure that there's always spaces available. And it also increases certainty that if you drive downtown, there will be a spot. It won't be free, but it'll be, on Palm Canyon and maybe in the close-in streets, it'll be available. So I went on ahead, I got a hold of Carl and we talked a little bit about this, and Carl brought up some really good points. What does this really reduce the number of trips, and will it really produce a net revenue, and what is the effect on merchants? And all of Carl's points are very valid. This isn't a big city. You can't take the subway. You can't do a lot of things that this really works. So, these are good things to think about. And I think that's one of the things that underscores maybe this is best as a pilot approach rather than a big change around. So it's, it hasn't X'd anything out of my mind, but it's open for conversation. Carl also mentioned that, the people that might be able to not take a trip and use Uber or walk or something like that are more city people who live in the city. And both he and I, have taken Uber and car shares in before just because we were going out, we didn't want to drive, and that reduces parking. So that does mean that the expense of this falls on tourists and people that aren't city residents somewhat. So it's a small statement though. So in my discussions with Dennis Woods, he suggested that we come up with a policy statement and some goals for the general plan. I mentioned this to Carl, and Carl said he brought it up at the last night's meeting, or he was going to try to. It's not on the agenda, so I don't think he could. So Carl, you may have some words for that for us.
It wasn't on the agenda, so we couldn't bring it up, although I did raise the issue. Commissioner Friedman sat through our marathon meeting last night, so he could comment. But when we're talking about it's not the college, I forget what the educational center that's the College of the Desert, where the old Palm Springs Mall used to be. I even thought, well, there's nothing there for ride sharing. Like, where are the students? They're not taking buses to get to college. There's nothing in that plan about transportation. In fact, most of the general plan doesn't really look at transportation when they're dividing up spaces for commercial, residential, schools, parks, etc. It was never part of any conversation whatsoever last night. So it's something I want to try and raise, but since the general plan is so structured in the way this committee is going through it, there really isn't room to introduce the transportation element.
So Carl, but I did see in the vision plan, there was discussion of circulation systems that, you know, encourage safe bicycle and pedestrian music and pedestrian movement and flow of vehicle traffic, and also to create walkable neighborhoods. So that's not really transportation then, you're saying?
It's not on the agenda for this year's review for the 2040 general plan.
So if I understand it, there's a circulation element, but that's just a limited update. So that part is not being updated. Is that essentially, so the vision and priorities, the priorities kind of go to it, but the sort of details are not part of this round. I think that's how I understand it. So whether it can be snuck in somewhere else is a bit of a stretch.
I'm going to try to keep bringing it up at every meeting.
Yeah.
That I can promise you.
Well, tell you what, unless I get a thumbs down from everybody, and I'm, you know, I see both sides of this. I'll continue to try and write up a policy, since we have a council member that's supportive of this, and he asked me to go ahead and come up with a policy statement, some goals. I'm going to prepare them, but you know, we don't have to stick with it. But I'm just going to continue on this route, if that's okay.
Yeah, Jim, if you can have something ready for, I guess, a week and a half or so, we can go into and discuss it at the next committee meeting, for at least, you know, give you some feedback. If
Do I need to agendaize that to be discussed?
I prepare the agenda, so I'll just.
Yeah,
I'll
I could definitely
put it on
have something ready. I was just looking for format, so I don't have a copy of the. I think I lost track of my copy of the huge general plan that we're updating. Can I get that from one of you, Patrick, or?
It'd be on the city website.
It's on the city
What-
website.
What did you, what?
I
what
thought
were you
I
asking for?
found
The general
pieces
plan.
of it. Maybe
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
look
it's-
again. I'll check again. If I
So
can't
it's on
find
the
it.
general, it's on the website, and it's all electronic. It's not like a document that you download. It's
Okay.
like our municipal code.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just want to see like the format for,
I'll send you a link.
because
Yeah,
Dennis
I'll
was
send you-
specific about saying a policy statement and some goals. So I'll look to see for the format there.
All right.
And I
well,
will throw in, can I
yeah.
throw in one more little sidebar too, is Dennis also kind of shocked me, and he said he would be interested in seeing one of the lanes taken away on Palm Canyon and converted into a two-way bicycle lane. I thought that was interesting, but I know that's not related to this, so.
Okay,
So if there's any other questions, I'll go ahead and do this unless anyone has more questions.
Okay. I'll put it on the agenda for the committee meeting, Jim, and you're ready, great. And if you're not, then you're not, but at least it'll be on the agenda that I'll say Patrick. And so we'll have a sort of a placeholder for it.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Patrick. I got the link.
and then we can plan also to have it on the agenda for the January commission meeting.
Yeah, yep.
Okay,
And that's 10 minutes for me.
thank you, Jim.
Sure, thank you.
The next new business. Next item in new business is also a follow-up from a discussion, a presentation that we had at the November meeting. That's relating to materials and fixtures for outdoor dining at restaurants. Sandra has worked on a short version of a document that could be provided to business owners downtown. And that was included with the agenda packet. Do you have any comments you'd like to make on that, Sandra?
Just to keep it short, it's a public health issue, and if from a design point and the cost is the same, obviously we should be using the materials that are healthier, that are not virus friendly. So plastic being the worst offender. In fact, when I saw you earlier this morning, we were standing in front of some of those plastic box hedges, which look great in film, but they're traps. Oops.
Oh, you're turned off.
I'm on? Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think the most of the plastic has been removed, and of course everybody is closed now again. But most of the plastic has been removed. The biggest offender, I think, is the plastic box hedges, which very few, it happens more in the more fancy upscale places where they tried to do a nicer display. They're like a catch trap for viruses, and you can't clean them, you can't maintain them. So sometimes doing less or doing nothing is more successful. The plastic of any kind of plastic service is COVID friendly, virus friendly. So if it's not COVID, it's going to be a common cold or flu or SARS or whatever is going to be coming down the pipe. So it's a public health issue, and the materials, the cost of the materials are about the same, and certainly less than if you're using acrylic, which is also slightly under plastic. But plastic and glass and stainless steel, some of it is counterintuitive, are actually conducive to the virus, and then the cleaning and the maintenance are things you have to factor in as well. But the copper or copper sprayed surface, which can be used and installed easily without special tools, just like using paper. And then that would be the least virus friendly. And they're starting to use it in hospitals now for door handles, railings, and things like that that people are touching. Wouldn't have to be cleaned as frequently. And second to that would be single-use paper, as not being a trap. But that box hedge is just a trap. You can't clean it. And even when you clean it, you have to let it completely dry, which can take up to 4 hours. So I would suggest if we could just eliminate the use of the plastic in the outdoor dining, we would have a safer environment for everybody, for the workers as well as for the guests and the visitors. And it's just a simple matter of choice. Do you want the friendly or the unfriendly? Do you want to be healthy or not healthy? So I think just that study and the use of those materials, people don't know, and that you assume, oh, glass, plastic, and because of the hospitals and all of that, and the increased plastics that we were drowning in it at the beginning of the year. And if you recall, in early January, China was looking at eliminating all single-use plastics before COVID took over. So now we've, because of the medical plastics and the takeout and the shipping and that, we're up to our eyebrows again in plastic. So in this case, though, I just want to say that the plastic presents a health issue. And we've lost over 1,600 people in our county as of this evening. So if any lives can be saved just because we've used a better surface that can be kept clean and sanitary, I say go for it.
Well, now we have the draft document that you've provided, and the intent was to have that to be able to distribute to businesses. Considering the shutdown right now, perhaps we should stand down on it. If anybody has any comments, they can send them to you, and then eventually we can finalize that document and think about how we can distribute it.
Although, while everybody is closed down again right now, this would be a good time to consider before we reopen again, because that will happen. And it's just hygiene.
It's just consideration of the economics of asking them to do something else. So does anybody have any comments?
The only thing I'm not asking them to do something else. That isn't the point. It's letting them see what the range is of their choices so they can make the right choice themselves. It's nothing that you'd want to make anything legal. It's just making good choices, smart choices, healthy choices, just like washing your hands. So, and in a lot of cases, it isn't that they would have to buy anything. It would just be a matter of simply removing some of the materials. Most of the restaurants that haven't done a lot of fancy build out are actually better prepared than some of the ones that really tried to do a nice visual. So
then are there any comments or suggestions about timing for distributing this document? How do they feel?
The first comment I wanted to make, well, I'll answer the question that you've posed. I think that now that things are shut down, this is the time to plant the seed. Now, some people aren't going to be able to act on it, but they're going to have that seed. They're going to start to think about it. And one of the things when I read that document, I think I was up in the clouds having this war with the internet. I had to bog out on the meeting up in Portland. But one of the things that you mentioned, Sandra, was the different metals and how copper is, and I ended up doing a lot of reading on it. Copper is the most virus non-adherent. I mean, it just doesn't last hardly at all. And you think copper, oh, that's really an expensive building material. It's not. It's really cheap. And in fact, if you do any barbecuing, a wonderful way to barbecue vegetables is using, you can get, it's about a 12 by 10 sheet of copper, but it is so thin that you can put it on your barbecue and put the vegetables on it, and it still gets the lines from the barbecue, which is what we all love in barbecue, red bell peppers or whatever. But you can get this, you can get 2 sheets of that for barbecue for like $20, and it's cheaper if you, of course, you get it in mass. So that would be something that people could start to look into, and it would be, you could cover a counter with it, which is, they use tons of that cleaning fluid to clean off a counter. But I would say, number one, yes, this is the time. If you can get it done, I'd get it out there as soon as possible. And number two, I would go in and work a little bit more on the text so that it can be envisioned a little bit more clearly and how that could be used. I don't know if I get so much into the bushes, although I do take your point, but the places that there's the most, where it could have the most impact, I would definitely hit on those. And point out that it's not expensive. We can even make a cost comparison.
It doesn't have to be pure copper. It's like with the screening, and it comes in all kinds of mesh. You can use regular scissors on it, thumbtack it in, but as long as it has that light copper coating, it's a whole other world. And the hospitals are now utilizing the copper just like they have traditionally in kitchens and that, for not only for the heat purposes, but for health and hygiene. So
yeah, it's brilliant.
But who would, I would assume stainless steel and glass. Like I said, some of it is counterintuitive, but those are some of the worst. Glass even worse than plastic.
And it's recyclable.
Yes, yeah.
Are there any other comments? Sounds like, Sandra, there's a suggestion to maybe add a little bit more detail to the existing document and come back to us with it.
Okay, will do. Yeah, it's a simple thing, and I think it can make a big difference, just like any kind of hygiene.
So why don't you and I work on it, and then we can work with Patrick also about perhaps distributing it, because there's 5 weeks between now and our next meeting.
Okay, I would love that.
And make some progress on it. But, okay. Any other? Okay. So we're finished with new business, and now we move on to subcommittee and commissioner reports. The first is the standing subcommittee on solar and green building.
Okay, thank you, Chair Clark. Lots of things going on. First, I attended the Energy Commission's workshops on its proceedings over the past 2 weeks. These include SB 100 on renewable energy resources, SB 49 on flexible demand appliance standards, and the 2022 Energy Code. I'll prepare a summary of the workshops and where the proceedings are going for our January 5th Solar Green Building Committee, and I'll attach that summary to the committee report for the next month's commission meeting. I'm also following the Energy Commission's build proceeding, which allocates $80 million to incentivize the construction of all new electric low-income residential housing. Nearly half the funds are reserved for the SoCal gas territory. In light of City Council's approval last week of DAP's new low-income housing project, I'll send Commissioner Baker information about that program, and congratulations to Commissioner Baker, and also for including solar carports in that project, which I thought was great. Speaking of reach codes, last week the Energy Commission approved four more all-electric ordinances and posted then another four all-electric ordinances for public comment and approval at its meeting next month. To date, the Energy Commission has approved 36 ordinances from 29 jurisdictions, exceeding the standards in the 2019 Energy Code, and the latest matrix is included with Patrick's email from yesterday with additional materials for tonight's meeting. And also, I've been continuing my work as a beta tester for the Codes and Standards Cost Effectiveness app, which helps local jurisdictions show how their reach codes are cost effective, which is required for Energy Commission approval. I reviewed the new tools that show how the amount of cost savings and GHG emissions reductions for each measure, and I'll update the cost effectiveness table that I previously worked on with some of the new data. That's it in a minute.
Great. Thank you, David. The next is Standing Subcommittee on Waste Reduction.
Just a couple of things to follow up on. One is based on our conversation at the subcommittee meeting and our last commission meeting. We're going to be doing some updates to our signage to make sure that people are aware of what not to throw in their recycling bin downtown. So we're working on that. And then I mentioned the valley-wide coordination on 1383 already. And then the only other note that I have is the other big thing that we've been working on a lot is getting out notifications to businesses around current organics requirements and recycling requirements. And so all the letters went out over the last month, and then about 700 of them, and then they have been starting to respond to us with various exemptions and other sorts of service requests. So we'll see where we are at the beginning of the year with that, but I believe that that is going to take a significant amount of attention here moving forward, and it is especially complicated because it involves restaurants and they keep changing the operating parameters for restaurants. So it's a very hard conversation to have right now because nobody's normal, and so we're just trying to figure that out too. So that's about it on that front.
Thank you. The next is Standing Subcommittee on World Environment Day. Jennifer's not here, but I can give her.
She's here.
Yes.
Yep, she joined us.
Okay, great. Jennifer, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, I'd love to. It didn't make it into the agenda. I apologize. I didn't get to look at it before this meeting. So for the art contest, I have an update, since I think that that's going to be a large part of what we're doing for World Environment Day this year. The EEC applied for this other grant as well that looks like it was funded. So I think we have 2,500 from that. I don't know exactly the number on that. We had some money allocated from the EEC for the contest. And so it would be wonderful if you all are up to also sponsor one part of the contest. You know, we were discussing the essay contest, environmental justice as the theme. And so interestingly, I thought that our theme this year would be water, because I've been rotating the 5 elements. One of the chairs of the Environmental Education Collaborative, when she just started making the flyer, just like a prototype of this, she did air. And I think for 2020, it's quite fitting. It seems like with COVID and George Floyd, and there's a lot of, I don't know, I can't breathe is quite crazy. And we think about the Salton Sea as well. So I think that we just decided, because it seems so fitting, to switch around the elements. I mean, nobody says that they have to go in exact same order, but they've been that way for the last 15 years. So I think it's okay for 2020. So I'm hoping that you all would love to sponsor, part of this. I think it's a way for us to get the commission's name out there and to do something positive. And so I don't know exactly when we want to get this flyer out, but I'm bringing it up like this because, I don't know if we have to vote on it. Could we do that, virtually, or does it have to be done in a meeting like this?
Question.
I mean, a vote by the commission members?
Well, yeah, I just don't know if, since we're meeting in 5 weeks from now, I don't know if we need to get the flyer out before that. So it would be nice to have our logo on it. I mean, that's part of my intention of, wanting to present that. I thought we were going to be talking about it tonight, and I apologize. I thought that the meeting was next week. So I just had the dates mixed in my head a little bit wrong, so I apologize. But is there a way that we can, if we're not ready to vote on it tonight, or maybe if we could, that would be great. But if we could, Lonnie?
Yeah, just question. I mean, I need a little more information. Are you talking about like a writing contest, an essay? You mentioned an essay, like talking about maybe a 200-word essay or something like that with that theme in mind. And
Yes.
then our job would be to offer 3 prizes and like review.
Well, that's to be determined, I guess, who is the judges. I know that Roy was contacting an environmental justice group to see if they might want to assist with that. So we also have, the collaborative. Everyone is pretty much open to just inviting in whatever aspects of contest. So if we have an essay contest that we sponsor, it would be probably grades 4 through 12, and an adult. I think it would be appropriate to offer an adult category, just to encourage critical thinking amongst anyone that wants to participate. We decided probably not below the 4th grade. I don't know what to expect.
You would have the format of what the contest would be like, and then what the Sustainability Commission would do is fund the prizes, or is that what the commission?
Yes, and
oh, yeah. Well, that doesn't seem like too hard a decision to make tonight.
Again, Jennifer, I guess I don't understand the time frame. I thought that the art contest was later in the year, next year.
I know. Well, it would be due in May, Roy, but in terms of getting the word out, because I shared with you last month about the youth summit that's going to happen. So we need to have a flyer for that. We're having an adult symposium for the Environmental Education Collaborative. So we want to get the promotional materials for this done, and so that they can be distributed through the county offices as well as through these other 2 events that are going to be happening. So that's where the timing comes in. If we want to be a part of it, I would love to have our logo on it and to be a part of that and part of the sponsors. So it's, if we're not ready to vote on it, that's okay too. I think it could be something in the order of $500. And so it's, it could be more if we wanted to. I mean, we could do $500 and $50 prizes, and maybe $300 prizes for exceptional entries. I'm not sure. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of, a huge commitment of money, but I think yes, Lonnie.
So, Roy, I have a question for you. You seem a little reluctant to pursue it at this point, and I'm questioning you. Why is that? And it sounds like Jennifer's doing all the work.
I'm not reluctant. I'm surprised at the time frame. From what I understood, that if we were doing this as part of the art contest, where the awards are around World Environment Day, which is in June, my understanding was that we didn't need to do anything right now. And in the meantime, I did contact the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, which has an office in Coachella, because in our last meeting, we thought it would be useful to have them support us in terms of coming up with guidelines for an essay contest and also to commit to be judges. I haven't yet heard from them, so we don't even know if they'll be available or able to help us. It seems that would be
If we- Oh, sorry.
so.
Yep.
Again, I guess the question is, what do we need to do now to be in the game? Is it committing a small amount of money so that we can be included in the?
Included on the flyer. So if we commit to just being sponsors, I think that the details can be worked out. If, any commissioners want to participate in being judges, typically in the art contest, we've had the commission invited to participate in the judging aspect of it. We've invited community members that have, environmental backgrounds. So it could be a lot of different types of judges, whoever is inspired to participate in that. Plus we have the Environmental Education Collaborative, which is fairly large. I mean, just the board alone is open. I'm sure many people would be open to judging. So I think that, we may have judges in those 3 different categories. So there's going to be, visual arts, what we've had for many, many years. There will be a spoken word option, which will also be grades 4 through 12 and adult category as well. And then, the essay contest. And, perhaps, I don't know, because of this extra funding, we may be able to do a poetry contest or something for the younger kids as well, so that if they wanted to do a literary arts entry, that may be possible. So, we may not need to decide on an amount that we want to sponsor, but maybe if we could get, affirmation that everyone's open to being the sponsor and at least committing $500, if not more, maybe $500 to $1,000 for prizes, then I think that we could just at least have our logo on the flyer, which would, and offer what this is. So, and I like that you asked, the environmental justice people to help with the guidelines. I think that could be really helpful in terms of writing those out for the essay contest. But what's going out right now, maybe even just like a save the date to think about, is announcing the 3 competitions.
So if time criticality, we probably should have a motion to commit some funds to get our logo on the flyer and to get this moving. I think we still need some additional participation in order to execute this, but we don't want to miss the boat, so to speak. And so if you feel that we need to get started now, we should probably have a motion to commit some funding, maybe not the prize amounts, but perhaps just to get involved in the flyer, get included in the flyer.
Sounds good.
So would you like to make a motion?
Lonnie?
Hi. I'd like to make a motion that the Sustainability Commission approve an amount of money to be determined to participate in this program and in this contest, or these contests.
So we probably should have a not to exceed.
Okay, not to exceed $750. Not to exceed $750.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Rob? Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? Would you like to repeat your motion one more time and then we'll vote?
Okay. I would like to move that the Sustainability Commission approve funding not to exceed $750 for prizes and for it to be a budget, actually, for participation in this contest or contests.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By voice vote, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the Ad hoc Subcommittee on Walkability and Pedestrian Planning.
Thank you. So I did just want to mention that we have started to socialize the survey that's being conducted by our consultant for input to the sustainability or the pedestrian safety and safe routes to school master plan. We sent that around on our Facebook page, and I think that was shared with the neighborhood group as well. It's also, we're also working on getting a press release out to let people know that the survey is out there. And really this survey is designed to just get some input on from both visitors and residents about their pedestrian experience here in Palm Springs. And there's a mapping tool that where they can identify specific places where they think are problems or opportunities for enhanced safety. So anyway, so that is really the big development that has occurred since our last meeting. Or actually, our community advisory committee met right after we met. So that happened too. And the community advisory committee is quite a diverse group of people in terms of perspective. Each person that participated really had some great insights and different insights about pedestrian issues. So it's really interesting to hear them talk. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get some really good feedback. Our big challenge is going to be integrating what we've already heard and kind of balancing near-term actions with longer-term kind of goals for that effort. So anyway, so that's off to a good start. And I think that the next community advisory committee meeting will be in January. So that's where we'll talk about a lot of that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next is Ad hoc Subcommittee on Bicycle Routes and Cycling.
I have nothing for tonight, but I think I might try and put together a meeting of our subcommittee again before our next commission meeting. So there's a couple of things that came up with talking to council members. So, but nothing else to report.
Okay, thank you, Jim. The next is Ad hoc Subcommittee on Night Sky.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay, thank you. And Ad hoc Subcommittee on Strategic Planning and General Plan Update.
Yeah, I provided a little report in the document or in your packets. Really, we met for the first time and we kind of talked through the various plans that are underway right now and important connections that we've got with the general plan, which we're going to be exploring. And basically, the next steps are to take a look at our current plan activities and see where we are with those. We've got a little matrix that we're going to try to fill out for that analysis, identify how we want to dispose of topics. So if there are items in our current strategic plan we want to keep those. And then if there are things that we need to transfer to other departments, we should do that. And then what do we just kind of eliminate altogether for whatever reason. And then kind of once we have that more refined kind of set of ideas, kind of reach out to the public and experts to inform those conversations and then develop some goals around those. And then really trying to figure out how to incorporate them into the general plan and how, what we need to do to have both kind of a near-term strategy as well as the longer-term strategy that might appear in the general plan. So I think that's about it. We're planning on moving forward with some of those discussions in January. So.
Thank you. Water conservation.
All right, just a second to get to my unmute here. So at the December 1st EWA meeting, the board agreed to hold off rate increases until June 2021 and initiated in May or June of next year the rate study required under Proposition 218 for any rate increases beginning in July, and rate increases would be needed for DWA to accelerate the replacement of its pipelines, 43% of which are beyond their expected life of 68 years. Last month, DW held a webinar on pipeline replacement, which you can watch on their website. DWA is working with the city and the other Coachella Valley water agencies on a work plan for a salt nutrient management plan required by the Colorado River Basin Regional Water Quality Control Board, and that has to deal with the city's wastewater plant and the various salt and nutrients there and how DWA fits in. And then finally, DWA and its customers achieved an 11.8% reduction in potable water consumption during November 2020 compared to the same month in the 2013 baseline. They're working to update the 2013 water production baseline, since that's the metric that now must be reported to the State Water Resources Board. And also the State Department of Water Resources has approved DWA's method of calculating seasonal residents in the population. So that's good news. That's taken them a while. So that's it for DWA.
Wellness.
We didn't have a chance to meet yet. I think we're going to try and get together before the end of the month. So I'll have something in January.
On the smoke.
That's being the representative from the Human Rights Commission regarding the non-smoking ordinance.
Thank you.
Just as an aside on that topic, I did receive a phone call from a resident about smoking in multifamily units. And she was very eager to see this proposal or ban move forward, or ordinance move forward. And I did send her the packet from our meeting where we discussed both of those options. And so I'm not sure if she's planning on writing counsel or not, but she was very eager for something to move forward with it. So anyway, just FYI.
Patrick, would you like me to reach out to her?
I think she's good. She basically had a question that I was able to answer, and I think that she was good. I think she was just very eager to have something happen. So if I find her info, I'll forward it to you.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, Desert Community and Energy.
Okay. At its meeting next Monday, the DC board will consider approving contracts for 3 wind projects within the Palm Springs city limits near the freeway. These will be DCA's first long-term contracts to secure renewable energy at favorable rates and will lead to local job development. I was part of the RFO review team and will make a public comment at the DC board meeting in favor of contracts. The first 6 months of the service, DC's carbon-free customers have reduced GHG emissions by more than 12,000 metric tons of GHG each month, and the equivalent of taking 15,000 cars off the road in that period. And Desert Saver customers have saved almost $200,000 in the same period, and these numbers were included in the State of City report, and also Council Member Coors mentioned them last week at the City Council meeting. The rate stabilization schedule is effective starting December 1. The new rates remain within the parameters set by City Council and DC Board, which is about a 0 to 1% average total bill discount of DC's Desert Saver product, and up to a 10% average total bill premium on DC's 100% carbon-free product when compared to SC's average total base product bill. And then DC will post the updated rate comparison table and the new rate comparison tool on its website next month. DC staff is working with Grid Alternatives to prepare a letter on city letterhead to residents of affordable housing units that could be equipped with rooftop solar, and is coordinating with Patrick on that. And then DC staff is also coordinating with Patrick to publicize the new sustainability scholarship that Patrick mentioned, and also the home energy assessment rebate program that also launched at the same time last week. And then finally, at the CBAG level, staff is working on the Inland Empire Regional Energy Network business plan that will be filed with CPUC next month. And if approved by the CPUC, we'd have a regional energy network to start in 2022. And that's it for DC. And the board meeting's next Monday at 2:30 for whoever would like to, dial in.
Thank you. And the final item on our agenda is commissioner comments and upcoming agenda. As always, we'll go through the list, not around the table. And anybody has any additional comments or suggestions for the upcoming agenda, this is the time for it. And please keep your comment to about a minute. We'll start with Commissioner McCann. Do you have anything, Rob? I think he may have left. Commissioner Baker,
Nothing.
Commissioner Flanagan,
Nothing new.
Commissioner Friedman,
Nothing further, thank you.
Commissioner Futterman.
I just want to thank you all for, committing some funds to this contest. When you proposed the 750 right after that, Lonnie, it dawned on me that it's perfect to committing to no more than that. It's good to get our name on the flyer, but if you all might consider, we could vote on this next month to maybe increase it to 900. We would have $550 each for the 4th grade through adults, best of those categories, and then $100 for grades 4 through 6, 7 through 9, 9 through 12, and then adult. So it's $150 extra. If we could just decide on that for next time, it might be nice to have like the grand prizes. So that's all.
And it's important that we get a start right now. And not wait until the next meeting. And if we do need to make adjustments, that'd be great. And perhaps you can put together a little bit more specific proposal outlining what you just said.
I can, sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Garrett.
You're on mute, Sandra.
My mistake. I've been aware of the Arbor Day Foundation, but I didn't know a whole lot about them, and I'd looked into it recently, and I wanted to discuss it with Jennifer as maybe something that we could do with World Environmental Day. But they have a program that they call Tree City, where you get a status as a tree city. Our neighbors, Temecula and the city of Riverside, both have that status. So I don't know if there's costs other than actually the planting trees, or if you're just making a commitment to planting a certain amount of trees over a certain amount of time. But if it's of interest, I'll pursue this and see what it takes, because it's a friendly, good thing. And if we want air, we need plants and trees. So it seems like kind of a good thing, and we'll see if there's what the expenses, but we could be Tree City.
But wouldn't there be a huge difference between Riverside and Temecula in terms of climate and what can grow there versus what can grow here?
Absolutely. So apparently they have this, all over. So depending on where you are, if you're in Washington State or Arizona, your tree selection is going to be quite different. So they just will give you that status based on whatever region you're in, be it palm trees or, pine trees. So, but it's a user-friendly thing, and it certainly sounds good to be a tree city. And we are named after trees, after all, here. Palm Springs.
In the East Coast, lots of cities in the East Coast.
Sandra, can I also add, I would love to have shade trees downtown. And
Yes.
I've been looking all over front, and the Chilean mesquite tree is my #1 favorite. But we're going to need shade in the summer and coming up with the way the temperatures are going crazy. So at least a couple of shade trees would really get me happy.
Yes, absolutely.
There's an issue with that I didn't know until recently. It was shade trees in the desert and traffic lines, buses and stuff. You can't have shade trees go into the traffic lane, so they have to be pushed back closer to the buildings.
Right, right.
Thank you. And Commissioner Miller.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but after the last comment, I have to say that the idea, what I'm thinking a lot of these days, and preparing for this coming summer, and the summers after it. And we can pretty much be sure that if anything, it's going to get hotter, and we do need more shade. We need it wherever we can get it. We need the benefits of trees, whether it's a palm tree or, as we found out, an elephant's food. It's called elephant's food. It's a kind of a cactus, or a kind of a succulent, actually. We need as much as we can and as much as we'll tolerate our climate. We live in the desert, that's true, but trees don't mean that we don't live in the desert. And I definitely support as much tree life as we can here in preparation for what we're looking towards in the not too distant future.
The Planning Commission has that high in their agenda, so all new projects, there's a requirement for every, I forget how many parking spaces, there has to be a tree. For all new developments, the boundaries have to have green. So the Planning Commission's all over that. Just leave it at that.
But I'll look in to see what it takes to get that status of being, we might even already qualify, and then we can continue on with more tree planting. But it certainly is a nice thing to have on your city resume, that Tree City, so.
And it may be some way that the Sustainability Commission could collaborate with the Planning Commission.
Yeah. Sure. And Commissioner Flanagan's got to get our bike city designation, so we're just waiting for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were supposed to finish that before you left, Dan.
Oh, well, we handed it over to staff.
Right.
The next person.
Right.
Thank you. So we're at the end of the meeting, and our next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, January 19th at 5:30. A motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll move this, Carl.
Carl, second.
I'll second the motion and wish everyone a Merry Christmas
Mhm.
or Happy Holidays.
And
All in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Dan.
Thank you so
Merry
much,
Christmas,
Ray.
everybody. Thank you all.
Guys.
Holidays.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Good night.